Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thanks so much for joining us. The parents of a teenager accused in the deadly Michigan high school shooting have pleaded not guilty to multiple charges. James and Jennifer Crumbley were arraigned Saturday morning. Prosecutors charged them with involuntary manslaughter, and the judge set bail at $500,000 each. Police found the Crumbleys hours earlier in a building in Detroit, about 40 miles from their home. Officials say the couple skipped their first court appearance Friday, which triggered the manhunt. While police were looking for the parents, the community in Oxford, Michigan held a vigil Friday night, mourning the 4 students killed in the shooting. 7 other people were wounded. CBS News' Michael George has the latest.
Facts of this case are so egregious.
Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald expressed her astonishment at the events that led up to the shooting at Oxford High School, saying the actions of Ethan Crumbley's parents went far beyond negligence.
Any individual who had the opportunity to stop this tragedy should have done so.
McDonald offered new details into Tuesday's shooting, revealing that Ethan was with his father on Black Friday when the gun was purchased, and that Ethan and his mother had made social media posts about it. Ethan just got my new beauty today, and Jennifer Crumbley writing over Thanksgiving weekend that it was a, quote, mom and son day, testing out his new Christmas present. School officials became concerned on Monday, a day before the shooting, when a teacher saw Ethan Crumbley searching for ammunition on his phone. His mother was contacted by the school, but phone records show she told her son in a text message, quote, LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught. On the day of the shooting, prosecutors say a teacher found a note on Ethan Crumbley's desk depicting violent images and messages.
In another section of the note was a drawing of a bullet with the following words above that bullet, quote, blood everywhere. Further down the drawing are the words, quote, my life is useless, end quote. And to the right of that are the words, quote, the world is dead.
Crumbley's parents were summoned to the school and told to get him into counseling within 48 hours. They resisted the idea of taking him home. The 15-year-old returned to class, and prosecutors say he then carried out the shooting. Upon hearing the news of the shooting, Jennifer Crumbley texted her son saying, Ethan, don't do it. James Crumbley called 911 to say that a gun was missing from their home and that his son might be the shooter.
I expect parents and everyone to have humanity and to step in and stop a potential tragedy.
CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson joins us now. Jessica, every time we hear more details, we're just sort of stunned by this. Let's start off with the parents. How much does the parents leaving their home, skipping their first arraignment, triggering that manhunt, how much does that factor into their case?
It will. The prosecutors will use it to show consciousness of guilt. The prosecutors will argue, look, innocent people don't flee. Innocent people turn themselves in, say, what can we do to help? Here's what we know. Now, I understand that their explanation has been, well, we need to leave for our safety. Frankly, just based on what we know now, their actions don't add up to that. Their actions very clearly look like they were people who just did not want to be arrested. And so, again, the prosecutor now has evidence to indicate that these are not people who, at the very least, were willing to help in law enforcement, and that at the most that this shows that they understood that they themselves could face criminal liability here.
Well, the attorney representing the parents released a statement following their arrest. It reads in part, quote, while it's human nature to want to find someone to blame or something to point to or something that gives us answers, the charges in this case are intended to make an example and send a message. Jessica, what does this tell us about the defense's strategy potentially in court?
I think what they're going to say is that these are novel charges, or the defense when it comes to the parents, of course, is that these are novel charges that you should not have gone from charging their son, the shooter, and then stretch that kind of one more link to the parents. It basically shows, I think, their strategy is, look, we know you're upset, we know this is a tragedy, but don't try and now impute this onto my clients. Don't try and impute this onto the parents. And I think what they'll say in general is, you can't draw this line. You can't make this connection from what their son did to their being criminally liable here. And I think that will be frankly, most of their defense. And again, I think they're emphasizing this idea that, well, we don't typically see charges against parents, so there's something different here. It's an aggressive prosecutor who's just trying to, make a political statement.
So explain to us how prosecutors did settle on charging the parents with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, and what will they need to prove in court?
So what they're going to need to prove is that defendants acted in a grossly negligent manner and that their actions, either their affirmative actions or their omissions, their failure to act under Michigan law, helped to cause this tragedy of the students. That essentially their actions were what we would call in law school kind of the but-for cause of these tragedies. And so why would, you asked me, why were they charged? I think that one thing that's really important to emphasize is that the parents aren't being charged because they're parents of a troubled teen who knew their teen was troubled. As we just heard in the introductory package, they had significant involvement. They helped to purchase the gun. They knew that their son was looking for ammunition. The mother sent a text saying, LOL, basically, I'm not upset, just don't get caught. That they were called into school, that they were told there's disturbing things here, and that they refused to essentially take him out of that dangerous environment, that by leaving him there, that they helped set all of this in motion. And not just, again, leaving him there, but buying the gun, being aware he was looking for ammunition, being aware that there were troubling signs from the school. Now, they might respond, look, if it was that dangerous, then the school shouldn't have allowed him to go back to class. And that's another part of their defense that we may see. But again, want to emphasize, they're not being charged because they're parents who knew their son was troubled. They're being charged the same way any adults who were involved in a minor obtaining a gun and being aware of the minor's actions would be charged.
The suspect is facing 24 charges, including terrorism causing death. We talked a little bit about how the parents' aspect of this makes this case different from other previous school shooting cases. What else stands out to you, Jessica, in terms of how this one is different from things that you've seen before?
Yeah, so obviously the charge against the parents, well, I think it is different. The parents, again, have a different level of involvement here than what we typically see, a different level of awareness. Now, with respect to the terrorism charge, I think one thing that's important for people to know is that Michigan, after 9/11, did enact this fairly broad state law that allows you to charge people who intimidate or coerce either a civilian population or government actors by their actions. Now, I'm being a little broad here, but Michigan, in fact, does have a very broad state law dealing with terrorism. Now, people argue that was really intended to be used just for terrorist acts, and that's how it's typically used, that, I think somebody sent in a bomb and you would charge them under that terrorism statute. But in this case, what the prosecutors are really saying is, think of what happened to those kids inside the classroom. Think of what happens in a school shooting. And Michigan does have a history of using this particular statute more broadly. I believe they used it in 2012, dealing with somebody who was in his car, basically, on a shooting spree. So that is something also different that we're not typically used to. And then, of course, we see the typical charges of, first-degree murder, intent to commit criminal assault, and so, certainly we'll be following the case to see if other states would follow suit.
All right, Jessica Levinson, thank you.
Thank you.